this is a rare chance to have the middle school and the upper school all in the same place at the same time. And we're going to play a game because this is going to be a fun way to introduce the world to what Friend Central is all about. So, there are 7 people wearing special t-shirts. Would you all stand up, line up in order?
We don't have an R.
We don't have an R? Where'd R go? Will, come on down. All right, can you see them? Hey, middle school up there, if you can't see, let me see if I can pull up the video feed. There we go. Maybe that's a little bit better. Yeah? Cool. So if you can see them, we're going to play a game about friends and about friends and about connecting with each other. So I teach at Friend Central School, and if you don't go to Friend Central School, then maybe that sounds a little bit cheesy to you, right? Because people don't necessarily understand that there's a difference between friends with a lowercase f and friends with an uppercase f. Friends with a lowercase f are maybe the people that you're sitting with right now and the people that you hang out with and your buddies, right? Friends with an uppercase f, we're borrowing that word from the Quaker tradition. That uppercase F stems from a belief that there is that of God in everyone. Or if that language doesn't resonate with you, it stems from a belief that there is something within everyone that you will meet and everyone that you will never meet that is worthy of your time and of your respect. So we're going to play with uppercase F, lowercase f friends. And folks wearing t-shirts, do you know where to go? All right, go for it. Distribute yourselves around the room. And Dr. Shoes, can I have you? Yeah. Dr. Schuster, our assistant head of school, is going to join us up in the middle. Cool. All right, so in order to make this work, I need to explain what you see around you. One of the things that you see around you are my friends wearing these t-shirts. Another thing that you see around you is about 1,000 feet of wire. And so we're going to use a MaKey MaKey, which was invented by Eric on this call. We're going to use a MaKey MaKey in order to play this game properly. So I'll just do a really quick demo. This is a MaKey MaKey. If you can see what I'm holding here, it's just a little thing. I've got 2 of them hooked up in front over there. And the way that a MaKey MaKey works is that it allows you to, whenever you complete a circuit using a MaKey MaKey, it simulates a key press on the computer keyboard. Anything that's conductive and helps complete that circuit will simulate a key press. So I'll do a really quick demo. I'll just plug it into the computer. Cool. I've got my 1 ground wire over here and then 2 positive wires over here. And if I make them touch, it worked. Cool. So that simulated a right arrow key press. If I go back the other way, yeah, it worked. Cool. Can I have a volunteer? Somebody who's close by. Elias, would you come on up? Elias, would you hold the red one and hold the metal part? Yeah? Cool. So anything that's conductive is going to complete the circuit. So Elias, high five. That worked too well. Let's try it again. You ready? Just 1. Yeah. Cool? All right, cool. Thank you.
All right.
So we're going to play a game that does that, except multiplied by 600 people. I have no idea if this is going to work. It's not really possible to test this sort of thing before we actually do it. So here's how we're going to play. Dr. Schuster is going to be holding the ground wire. And people wearing shirts that have FRIENDS will be holding the wires plugged in to the other side of the MaKey MaKey. Your job will be to form 7 human chains holding hands, connecting Dr. Schuster to each one of the people wearing one of those t-shirts. So far, does that make sense? Yeah? All right, good, good. I've got one rule. I've got one rule to make this work. It's kind of funny, nobody wanted to sit in the first row. Hey, Alex, would you go sit in the first row? Trust me. We need you. Great. Thank you. All right, one rule. Get comfortable right now. Both feet flat on the floor. Very good, thank you. Things are about to get rowdy. And the rule is you can't move your feet. So lock them in right now. You can't move your feet. Come on, we didn't even start playing yet. You're getting all distracted. All right, let's do this thing. Your goal is to connect from Dr. Schuster to each of the people wearing t-shirts. These human chains will start in the front. They will grow, and they will grow, and they will grow. And if middle school up in the balcony, you're wondering, how is that going to happen, right? There are 2 wires that are dropping down to the lower level. You're going to have to find some way, not just to make connections to Will in the back over there, and Annie in the back over there, and Molly over here, but you're going to have to find a way to make a connection to those wires up to the balcony. And then middle school, do you see where teachers wearing t-shirts are? Yeah? You're going to have to find a way to make connections all the way back to them. The human chains will start up front, they will fan out all around the room, and then the very last step, once you have made your chain, that teacher will hold your hand, and then they're going to hold the wire, and if you can complete the circuit, congratulations. We can only win when all 7 human chains are connected at the same time. When you win, you'll know it. Ready? Yeah. The metal part. All right, people, here we go. I'm going to take the 2 MaKey MaKeys up here. Oh, chaos will reign in just a moment, I promise. You got to get started with some sense of order, though, please. Settle in. My 2 MaKey MaKeys up here. Let's get them plugged in. You ready? You know what to do? Dr. Schuster, you're holding the metal part of that wire, right? Would you reach out and hold somebody's hand? Build a chain. Make it happen, people. Go. Reach out. Reach out. There we go. We've got one chain coming this way. There we go, Lexi. Reach it. We need a chain going back to Lexi to get to the middle school. There you go. Connect back there. Can we get a chain across the aisle? We need to make it back to Will in the corner. Are you getting sound from the computer right now? I see connections. I see connections. That S is trying to connect. There's an S over here, and it's trying so hard to connect. Oh, an R, an I, an E. F. F, you're there. Hold it, F. N. Wherever you are, N. Keep that connection. D, I don't see any D. Who's the D? We can get some sound from that. That should be making noises. You getting any closer? I can't tell. You've got to make these chains. We've got to keep them at the exact same moment. If anyone breaks the chain, it's not going to work. The chain needs to be connected all the way through. Please work. Please work. Yeah, and I don't know why. So the sound should be coming right from there. Yeah. I'm thinking if I unplug this for a moment, then we might get sound.
Well, maybe the speakers are.
D! D, I love it. Stay put, D. Don't move a muscle. D. S. Yes. There you go. Who's up next? R, are we connected to R over there? Can you slide that down?
Yeah, sorry.
He is our strongest one so far. N, I see you, N. I see you. Oh, there it is. Come on, people. We're so close. We're so close. I'm going to give you one more minute. You've got one more minute to make this thing happen. E, I don't see you. E, you've got to connect back to Annie in the very back row. There we go. I heard that. Yeah, there we go. Now we got sound, too. All right. D, stand strong. There it is. All right. Focus, people. Let's do this. I'm giving you 30 more seconds. Go! Go! Come on! 1, 2, 3. Connect them, people. Yeah! All right! Dance party. Oh yes. Dance it up, middle school. Woo! Woo! That was fun. All right. Thank you, everybody, for playing along. That was fun. A little bit terrifying, a little bit overwhelming, but that was fun. Thank you. All right. Now we transition to part 2. Let me introduce our 2 very, very special guests. We're getting a chance to talk to Dr. Rosenbaum. Eric, say hi.
Hello.
And AnnMarie Thomas.
Hello.
Cool. AnnMarie and Eric are both first and foremost, just really wonderful people, but they're also brilliant inventors too. We are so fortunate to have a chance to talk with them, that it's such a special event that really we couldn't just keep them all to ourselves, and they are the reason why we're broadcasting this on the internet. I got an email from I was trying to kind of get the word out about this special event, and then I got an email a few days ago from someone asking what time zone we're in. That's how special these people are. So this is going to be great. I didn't really want to try to introduce you myself because I don't think I could do that properly. AnnMarie, since you're an alum of the school, can I ask you to start and just introduce yourself to everybody in the room?
Sure. So it's pretty unbelievable to be back at Friend Central for the day. I told my daughters today that I was speaking in Philadelphia, and they're very confused because I'm in Minnesota right now in my office. But I was in your seats a very long time ago. I'm a 1997 alum from Friend Central. And at Friend Central, I was fortunate to be involved a lot in the arts, but also in lots of science and physics and math and other classes. And so when I left Friend Central, I really wanted to teach but combine arts and engineering. And so I did my undergrad at MIT, where I studied underwater robotics, so ocean engineering, but also music composition. And then moved to a much warmer place, moved to California, where I did some doctoral work, also in robotics, focusing on underwater robots, and sneaking off at night to teach at an art school. These days, I'm an engineering professor in Minnesota, where I teach engineering students, but also K-12 teachers and educators and museum educators and others about engineering. And I lead a playful learning lab. So the research students that I work with, we do things like squishy circuits, which I heard some of the middle schoolers played with. So that was a project that was developed by one of my first-year engineering students and I when my youngest daughter was about 18 months old, and I wanted to teach her a way to build circuitry. But we also do things like the engineering of circus and putting sensors on my engineering students and then sticking them on flying trapezes to study pendulums. And generally, we look at how we can learn through doing things like what you just did with Colin, playing, which really is how we interact with the world. So I am incredibly excited to be here with you guys today, and also with Eric, who's one of my heroes.
Oh, shucks.
Right. There goes your intro, Eric. Would you introduce yourself to us a little bit?
Sure. I'm Eric Rosenbaum. I'm so happy that I've gotten to befriend Colin and AnnMarie because they're totally awesome. What can I tell you about myself? I'm just finishing up my PhD at the MIT Media Lab, which is a big, crazy playground where I get to make stuff. It's a lot of fun. And one of the things that I've been able to do there is invent the MaKey MaKey along with another student named Jay Silver. And how do you end up doing that kind of thing? Well, when I was a kid, I got started playing the trombone, and music has always been a big part of my life. Any little brass players out there by any chance?
Brass players? Let them know. We just had an orchestra and jazz band concert last night, actually. It was amazing.
Oh, fantastic.
Give it up to that. Sorry, back to you.
So, you know, playing music as a kid was really important to me, and one of the things that's really cool to think back on it now is that, like, I had no idea how important music was going to be in the rest of my life, and it's so hard to predict, like, where it's going to take you, because you know, in between, like, I went to college and I studied psychology, I did some neuroscience research, but I realized I'm totally fascinated by, like, how music works in the brain, and so I did some psychology of music and neuroscience of music, and then I started learning about creative technology and started making little musical robotic sculptures and interactive music interfaces, and then I realized I was interested in learning about education and how to help people learn through creative play and music through that. So one of my favorite things to do with the MaKey MaKey is to do, you know, make instruments out of crazy things like people and petunias and puppies and pennies and Powerade. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. So have you guys had a chance to do any music with MaKey MaKey already out there?
Hey, 7th grade. How about you? Let them know. if anybody remembers Project Leo, do you remember Project Leo last year with the handprints on the walls? Yeah, that used a MaKey MaKey. Anybody remember the musical staircase before that? That was a MaKey MaKey as well.
Those are beautiful and really inspiring projects. One of the most wonderful things for me about the MaKey MaKey project is, it started out in a lab as a research prototype. And so the question is like, how do we show people the importance of connecting bananas to computers? We had this dream, this vision, but now we've been able to share it with the world, and thousands of people are out there making stuff, and there are surprises every day. There's new things that I never thought I would see. And so the stuff that your school has put together and shared with the world on the internet is really a wonderful thing for me to see, and is inspiring. Like, I hope I get to make even more new events in the future. And, we're working on the next thing.
Good, good. Well, I wanted to get us started with a few questions. I have some questions of my own that I'd like to ask. And then I was thinking we could hit a rhythm where maybe the upper schoolers would have a question, maybe the middle schoolers would have a question, and to anyone who's watching online, you can go to friendcentral.org/hourofcode, and there's a little form at the bottom. So far I've got a few questions in that people have submitted online, but people in the room get first dibs. Here's one of my questions that I wanted to lead off with. Since we're celebrating Computer Science Education Week, I wanted to ask a little bit about the way that technology and programming has influenced your work. And specifically, one of the ways I'm thinking about it has to do with someone that both of you know well. Mitch Resnick has said, yes, Eric, you know him well. Mitch Resnick has said, he was Eric's advisor for your dissertation?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. He's another hero that someday I would love to have getting to talk to all of us.
Wait,
but he said that we should start... Say again?
You realize that Mitch Resnick went to Haverford.
Oh, is that right?
Your audience.
Shout out Haverford, all right. Well, one of the things I've heard him say before, and when I read the things that he writes, is that we should be using computers more like paintbrushes and less like calculators. So think about that for a second. We should be using computers more like paintbrushes and less like calculators. I was wondering if, Eric, you first might be willing to try to explain that to us, or if you can explain it and kind of share how that's been true in your experience. I think we'd all benefit from hearing about that.
Computers can be a creative medium. There is a way of thinking about them now where they're all about like delivering media to your eyeballs, where you're consuming, other people's creations, movies and video games, and that's a lot of fun. There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of our civilization. But I think it's really important for us to also push in the direction of helping people become creators as well. And so the question is, how can we help people do that? Like, how do we change the mindset? And the thing that the research group that I'm part of, that my advisor, Mitch Resnick, has been working on for many years, is developing new tools for that purpose, for helping computers be something that you can use to create and play and make with. And so MaKey MaKey is part of that endeavor. Some of you guys might be familiar with Scratch. Scratch, a little bit?
Scratch, anybody? All right. That's a yes. That's a resounding yes.
Awesome. So I've been a part of the Scratch project since I arrived at MIT, and it's amazing to see how it's kind of blossomed and grown in the world. And so that's another example of how we use computers as paintbrushes. I literally am interested in things like digital finger painting. What does that mean? And so I made this iPad app called Singing Fingers. It lets you finger paint sound on the screen. It's free. If you happen to have an iPad, you can try it out. And also I have some software for painting with light called Glow Doodle that uses the webcam on your computer. You turn out the lights, you wave around something glowing, and you can make traces on the screen and draw pictures and stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. AnnMarie, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about the way that technology has affected your work?
Sure. So in some ways it's sort of funny because I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and many things we do at home are fairly low tech. My kids sew a lot of their own clothing. We do a lot of cooking. And we really, truly see computers as just one more tool, like our sewing needles or like our oven or like our building blocks. And so really, it is a paintbrush. Some things work better with a paintbrush. Some things work better with a computer as the paintbrush. For me, actually, I've really come to appreciate, particularly with younger kids.
Oh no, AnnMarie. Okay, wait, say that again. We just lost you for a second, AnnMarie.
Okay. I'm incredibly fortunate that one of the projects that I'm currently working on is Disney just launched Disney A Magic Academy last week, which is a brand new multi-platform effort for preschoolers, particularly kind of 3 to 8. So not quite preschool, but a little above. Right now we're working on preschool, but using online tools and using digital explorations, particularly on iPads, to teach math and social skills and science and writing to really young kids, using characters that they probably already know. So I have to admit that I'm getting more and more into that field. I've always been more the tactile person in the Play-Doh and the circuits, but I'm lucky knowing and hanging out with people like Eric and Mitch and others that's kind of the next chapter of my work, is particularly little kids and what can we do with those computers.
Awesome.
So some of you may have seen Scratch even as Scratch Junior, which has no words on it. So a version for really young little learners. My daughter Gracie was a beta tester, and so her first time programming was as a 3-year-old playing with the Scratch Cat, which is pretty amazing to watch.
Cool. If I can ask one more question, I was thinking more broadly about all of the different things that you've both gotten yourselves into. I kind of just want to hear a story about where curiosity has led you at some point. So either something that you're curious about right now that's taking you in interesting directions, or something that at the beginning of one of these projects or one of these journeys that led you to interesting places. The things that I've seen the two of you kind of integrate and learn for the sake of an interesting project kind of amazes me. So would you talk a little bit about curiosity or about your approach to learning?
Who first, Eric?
I'm still trying to think of a cool story to tell.
Well, I can start then, Eric. Because you gave me an out. You asked about current project, and so I will admit, chemistry was never really my favorite subject. Even at Friend Central, I loved Pam Nix, was a great teacher, but it wasn't my favorite subject. Any of you upper schoolers currently in chemistry, I made it through. A lot of my work really hasn't involved chemistry, but sometimes, as Colin said, you learn things so that you can do really cool projects with really interesting people. And in my lab, we always try to pick projects that are a little bit outside the realm of what we know about. So we've just begun a project involving food. And that has meant that me, an engineering professor, 2 weeks ago I spent 13 hours in a professional kitchen in Chicago picking mint leaves and helping plate so I could understand what the folks in that kitchen dealt with. When I help work with them. But similarly, my lab group is sort of crash coursing in chemical sensors and chemistry for a project that we're doing in the food industry, which hasn't been our work up till now. But because we're so intrigued by the problem and the people that we get to work with and our collaborators, it means that we dive into it. And you hit a point where you realize that if you have the right people around you, you can learn almost anything. Maybe it doesn't mean the textbook is how you learn. Maybe it doesn't mean having someone lecture to you at the front of the room. But if you're really driven by wanting to know how to do something or how to create something, we live at a time where we have access to more resources than ever before. When Eric and I were in school, if we wanted something really interesting, we probably had to go to the encyclopedia to look it up, which meant a drive to the library, and then hoping that the encyclopedia was written within the last decade, or else the country lines were all off. These days, we have access to so much information, or even experts or our emails from across the world, that I think information and access to technology is growing. Curiosity is really the key. All the tools in the world won't let you do anything exciting if you don't have a good question to ask first.
Thank you. Eric, do you have any thoughts to share?
I think those questions come from our experiences in life, and a lot of the times. And for me, one of those was noticing when I was in high school that there was something odd about letters and colors for me. I read this fantastic book by a neurologist named Oliver Sacks. If you're curious about the mind and the brain and how those work how they affect who humans are and who we can be. I recommend the work of this guy, Oliver Sacks. He writes these case studies about fascinatingly strange things that happen to people. And one of the things that he wrote about, it was like maybe mentioned in a little footnote somewhere, is a condition called synesthesia. Anybody know about synesthesia?
Anyone?
Heard of that?
There are
No?
hands up. There's some hands
Cool.
up.
It's the mixing together of your senses. And so there are some people who can, when they hear a sound, they see a color in their mind. There's a case of a person who the sensation of taste becomes a shape for them, like a strawberry is a pentagon and chocolate is a circle or something, I don't know. So there's all kinds of examples of mixing together the senses. And it says something about how our brains are wired when we're born with everything more connected, and then it gets sort of separated out. Anyway, for me, letters in my mind have colors. So like Colin's name starts with a C, so it's yellow. I just think of it as yellow. I don't actually see the yellow like out there in front of me, but it's in my head. And I didn't realize that not for everybody else, C wasn't yellow until I read this book. So that was a realization. And I've been fascinated by these transformations between the senses that we can create with technology ever since then. And the Singing Fingers project that I mentioned earlier, finger painting with sound, turns the pitch of your voice into different colors on the screen. And that was one of the first examples where I was really able to play with synesthesia and maybe make it possible for other people. Since then, I've also been working on another iPad app that lets you create musical compositions with colored objects on the screen where color is mapped to pitch. And also now I'm working on something with MaKey MaKey and also with what's next, the thing beyond MaKey MaKey, to make musical paintings. So these are physical paintings made with like colorful acrylic paint that also have conductive regions where you can touch different parts of it to trigger sounds and melodies. And so that experience of wondering about how the senses were related to each other has led me down some unexpected pathways. But it's worth asking the question.
Wonderful. Can I turn it to upper schoolers and middle schoolers? Let's start asking some questions of your own. The way this is going to work is I can't give you a microphone because then there'd be a weird feedback loop in the room. So if you have a question, raise a hand. Stand up, say it loud and proud, and then I'll just relay it into the Hangout. I know it's hard to ask a question in a room full of 600 people. I'll give you a moment. Want to let the internet go first? Yeah? Okay. We can let the internet go first, that's fine. I'm going to answer one question from the internet. Jackson from Missouri wanted to ask AnnMarie why she's smiling so much. And I think it's because she's back at Friend Central. So there we go. There goes one question answered. Here's a real question for you. One question was asked by someone that AnnMarie and Eric and I all know. My grad school advisor at the University of Pennsylvania tuned in and has asked a question.
Yasmin.
So Yasmin Kafai has asked, hi Eric, if you could redesign the MaKey MaKey, what would you do differently? Hard question.
Whoa. I mean, I'd love to hear how other people would imagine redesigning it. I have my own ideas, but I'm sure there are lots of interesting things people have thought of from playing around with it. It's a very relevant question because we're actually thinking about future projects, like what does the next invention kit look like? What are some other ways we can connect the physical and digital worlds? I've mentioned that I'm obsessed with music technology, and so one of the directions I'm planning to take it is deeper into musicality. So it gives you more access to control of musical properties like pitch and maybe even timbre and loudness and different sounds, and also playing with different sensing techniques and new ways to connect it to music software to make it more flexible.
Thank you. All right, students, you're up. There we go. I'm seeing a few hands go up. In the very back row.
How long did it take to make the MaKey MaKey?
So another MaKey MaKey question. How long did it take to make the MaKey MaKey?
Well, when I was born, no, just kidding. There's a long arc to these projects, and many sort of feed into them. You don't necessarily know where they're headed, but there were a lot of inspirations and antecedents to MaKey MaKey for sure. I actually physically built something that later came to be known as the MaKey MaKey. Was 2010, I guess. Well, anyway, it was a couple of years before we actually launched our Kickstarter campaign and got it out in the world. And quickly hacked together a prototype just to see if it was going to work, if it would be interesting to people. And somebody made a teacup. When she drank from it, it would tweet. So it was like a tweet tea project. And somebody else made drum pants, so we could play different drum sounds by tapping on his knees. And another person made Dance Dance Revolution pads on the floor, and they could really play the game with those. And so seeing things like that made me realize, wow, there's some potential here. But Jay and I didn't really know how to take it forward for a little while. It wasn't clear what the path should be, so we had to just kind of hold on to it for a while until we could take the next step. Which in our case involved finding the right collaborators to help us manufacture it.
AnnMarie, can I spin that question to you in another way to say, how long do ideas have to incubate before you can actually complete them and then share them with the world? Can you give us a range of how long it goes from thinking about it first to then sharing it after?
0 seconds to a lifetime? I think I'm serious on that. I think it varies. I've been involved with. I know people who've been working on some projects for 30+ years. I know others that, thanks to the wonder of Twitter and other things, we can have an idea and suddenly be doing things within hours. I think we're kind of fortunate that we have that luxury now.
Yeah. Thank you. A few more hands are going up. Here we go. Robbie.
So what's the thing that you've worked on the hardest and in the end it just didn't end up working?
Great question. Can you give an example of the thing that you've worked on the hardest that in the end didn't work the way you expected?
So many things.
Does that question make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta try a lot of stuff first of all. Not everything works out. But that's how you learn what doesn't work, and you get unexpected new ideas from those things that flop. They're not flops; they're opportunities. Flopportunities. In graduate school, I've had the opportunity to try out a lot of things, to do a bunch of projects, and obviously some are more successful than others. Actually, the project that I did for my master's thesis was about reflective learning in Scratch, so helping people understand their own learning process by making little notes about what they were doing, what they were trying, what worked and what didn't work as they went. And it was a fascinating research study because I could work with the kids and help them think about the processes they'd gone through, where they'd gotten stuck and frustrated, where they'd had insights. But it turned out that that project, sort of technologically, I was not able to fit it into the actual out into the world. And so, I wrote a master's thesis about it. That's successful. But I didn't get it out in the world the way that I've been able to with other projects. But, I just kept going.
AnnMarie, how about you?
This is 5 years of my life. This is my PhD dissertation on a new type for underwater vehicles that you probably won't ever really see used. And I got about halfway through and realized it wasn't in building new thrusters and designing synthetic jet propulsions for autonomous underwater vehicles. But when you're partway at that point, you have to really think through what is your goal. And I was getting a PhD because I desperately wanted to teach. And at the time, there weren't engineering in K-12 roles at the same extent. So if I wanted to teach, I was going to teach at a college level, and I needed a PhD to do that. So I got about halfway through this project and realized that it wasn't my passion, but I had to finish it to finish a PhD, and I was already many years in, and I was going to give it my darndest. And actually, there's another lab in Colorado that was doing similar work, and their stuff has gone on phenomenally, and there are some really cool little vortex ring thrusters for robots. My work, not so much. But I realized that it was, for me, it was a means to an end. I needed to prove that I could take on a multi-year research project and design the equipment and take the data and get all the players involved and write a book about it. And I did that, but to me that was something that it didn't work out the way. If you had asked me when I was 21 what I was going to do when I grew up, it probably involved underwater robots and shipwrecks and really cool little jellyfish thrusters. So I guess in some ways it worked out because by sticking with the PhD, I spent my evenings at art school. I was teaching at an Art Center College of Design in Pasadena and doing installation art. And by day and by weekend, I was being a very good grad student and taking my data and designing my thrusters. But they didn't end up the way I wanted, and I haven't written anything on a synthetic jet thruster in 5 or 6 years. So I guess that was a project that I had such high hopes as a 22-year-old grad student that we were going to revolutionize robots, and that wasn't where it ended up for me.
I like that even though they didn't go the directions you expected, that the journey is worthwhile, it sounds like.
It got me here.
More questions? Let's do another middle school question, then we'll do another upper school question. Skylar.
What's one of your favorite things you've seen done with squishy circuits?
What's one of your favorite things that you've seen done with squishy circuits? I think people were singing, "Do you want to build a snowman?" and making squishy snowmen.
Oh, awesome! Oh, I love it. You know, it's really interesting. People always ask us what our goal was with squishy circuits, and I will be honest. That was a project I did for fun with a student. I'd seen people paint circuits. I'd seen people sew circuits, and I really wanted to sculpt them. And there were people who were using Play-Doh in circuitry in slightly different ways, so we knew it would be possible.
Hey, AnnMarie, I'm just realizing, I'm not sure if everyone in the room knows what squishy circuits are. Is that right? The middle school does, I think, but can you just roll back one step and introduce the project? And then think of an example.
And I'm embarrassed because I don't have a picture. Squishy circuits are conductive and non-conductive homemade Play-Doh. So you can actually build circuits that have lights or moving parts or buzzers by attaching a battery pack directly to your homemade dough and sculpting sort of whatever circuit you want. For me, the goal really was I had a little daughter, and I wanted to teach her about why I love circuitry, but I wasn't going to have my 1-2-year-old a soldering iron. I probably still wouldn't even have my 6-year-old. Things get dropped a bit. Hot soldering iron, probably not yet. And so we wanted a playful way of doing it. I also work with a lot of schools, and if you solder things together or you have breadboards, you have a lot of materials that you either use up or they're a little hard to manipulate if you've got preschooler hands. So we developed these 2 recipes, and now you can, in your kitchen, make your own circuits. And we've really been shocked. We did it for fun, like I said. It was something we thought we could use in my classes and the work I do with museums. We didn't think it would take off, and I got invited to give a talk at a conference that ended up getting viewed about 500,000 times. And in the years since, we've heard it from teachers in Iran and teachers in India and homeschoolers in Kentucky. We haven't heard from Antarctica, but apparently the other 6 continents are all using squishy circuits somewhere. And we made a very calculated decision, this does get back to the original question, was we didn't want to tell people how to use it. So if you go to our website, we show little videos, but we don't really tell you step-by-step how to do it. Instead, we like pointing links to other people who are doing great things. So for me, the most exciting things I've seen are when people reach out and say, oh, we saw these recipes and look what we did. So there was a preschool teacher in Georgia in the US who wanted to teach the kids about electricity, and so she dyed the conductive dough that lets electricity through it green, and she dyed the insulating dough, which stops the electricity, red, and they did stop and go like street lights. There was a home ec class in Washington in the U.S. that they combined the computer science class and the home economics class to make a giant batch of Play-Doh, and then they brought it to the computer science class and they integrated it with Arduinos and made different instruments using the different Play-Doh. So they had the 2 classes working together. So for me, that's the exciting thing. I love seeing things like snowmen, and I love when I'm with a preschool class and they build really cool little creatures they're excited about. But for me, it's just knowing that you can create a tool and not have to tell someone how to use it.
Awesome. Can we do another upper school question? I see a few hands. Well, actually, first, there's a... Wait, it's okay. I'm going to get to you. There was a question coming in from Michael in Texas. And he said, how come I can't see any of the students? Would you mind coming up here and you can ask your question from up here? Ask your question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, just ask your question. There's Eric.
Okay, so this is mostly a question for seniors, but how did the experiences you had both socially and educationally and the people you met in college affect what you do today?
Good question.
Thanks. I guess you do.
Thank you.
You want to start, AnnMarie?
Sure, thank you. So kind of you. I guess it's appropriate because for the seniors, I was sitting where you were in those same benches when I was in high school leaving for college. And I will admit, I really actually wanted to go to school for the fine arts. I was pretty sure I wanted to do painting or music, maybe theater. And I was encouraged by family to, pick something that incorporated that, but maybe minor in that. And, we debated that for a while at my house, and I decided that for me, engineering really was a fine art. Because you create new things. I did a lot of theater at Friend Central, but if you're in a play, someone tells you what to wear and what to say and where to stand. And I loved doing it, but I realized that I could see engineering kind of the same way, that I could basically create art like Eric does through engineering and take ideas and work on teams, just like what I got in theater and orchestra, being in groups. But I will admit that leaving Friend Central, I think there were 58 of us my year, showing up in Boston at MIT, which has 10,000 students, was a little daunting. And so for me, I will admit that one of my big regrets is that I was very shy and very scared for my first 75% of college, that I wasn't in the right place. And I think what really helped for me was I slowly realized that I wasn't a straight A student at Friend Central. I was not a straight A student at MIT. I was not a straight A student at Caltech. I was not a straight A student at Art Center. And I accept that. And I applaud all of you who are. But I also realized that grade wasn't really my worth. So in college, even though I might not have been the top student in the class, I spent a lot of my time, even my second week of college, going to labs and asking where I could volunteer. And so I started doing research and projects. I'm totally a project-based learner. If the class has a project, that's where I got the A. If it didn't have a project and it was all tests, I didn't get an A. And so I really used college as a chance to meet a lot of graduate students and professors and postdocs and work in their labs and be part of these teams that were working on research projects and working on, developing courses, which for me was a better fit for my learning style than focusing on what the grades I had were. So college was really a chance to try a bunch of things. I did some shows, I took some classes at the Media Lab where Eric goes to school, but I got to really explore. And for me, I think that was the most powerful thing, was realizing that, you spend a lot of time, maybe your senior year, looking at numbers that you're applying to colleges with, your SATs or your ACTs or your grades, and those are useful to a point. But really spending time figuring out who you like to be around and what sort of work you want to do and what sort of impact you want to make in the world. I always tell my first-year students that college is one of the few times when you have all of these resources there that are really designed for you. And it's not a mistake to change majors. You're supposed to play around and see which things you like. And so I guess my advice then is to really explore and try to be open to trying new things and not always succeeding, by the book at everything you try. I think that was my college takeaway. Eric?
Wow. Well, AnnMarie, you put that all really beautifully. So I'll just add a little bit, I guess, about my own experience. I mean, I had my challenges going through college, both socially and educationally. But a couple of things really stand out as ones that I carry with me even now as inspirations. And one of them is that, so I mentioned I play music, I play the trombone, and I was in the wind ensemble with a couple of guys who happened to play clarinet and befriended them. And we decided, hey, we should start a band or something. I don't know. Let's play Dixieland music. But we couldn't find anybody that played the banjo, so we couldn't start a Dixieland band. So we started a funk band instead. We were called Think thank funk. And that, as much as any of the classes I took, maybe my professors wouldn't want to hear that necessarily, but was really a powerful learning experience for me in learning how to become myself and assert myself creatively. I was a psychology major, and one of the things that I finally realized by the end of college, after doing what I think of now as not nice things to monkeys, but was, you know, brain neuroscience research with animals, was that I guess temperamentally, like, I love asking scientific questions, but I'm not suited, it turns out, I figured out after, you know, doing this in college a little bit, to the daily work of being a scientist. I wanted to do something more. Two of my roommates were computer science majors, and I looked at what they were doing. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if I can get credit as part of my psych major for taking the intro CS courses, computer science courses. And it turned out, yes, I could. And I'm very glad that I did that in retrospect. It wasn't clear, you know, at that time or even within the next couple of years how I was going to, you know, be able to use technology creatively. I could see hints of it. But now, of course, that's something that's really important to me later in life. But actually, I should say, even at the beginning, I started out, instead of just analyzing the data from neurons that we were analyzing, I used the same tool to synthesize sound and see what I could make it sound like. So that the seeds of the magic were there for me.
Thank you. I think we can do one more really quick question. Anybody have a very short question? And then after that, I have a few things I want to say to wrap up. And then we'll thank them. I'm going to let this one come from an upper schooler who's been helping run the sound to make this whole thing work. Hey, Sam, would you call yours out nice and loud?
What's the most rewarding part about what you do?
What's the most rewarding part about what you do?
We probably have this in common, but by putting creative tools out in the world that are truly accessible for a broad range of people to use and that are truly open-ended so that you can use them in a lot of different ways, we create this space of possibilities where creativity comes back. Like, this is why I love making creative learning environments and creative tools, is because the world has so much creativity that bubbles up, and I feel that positive energy in it, and it fuels me to do the next thing, to keep going. And so I love seeing what people create.
AnnMarie, any last thoughts? That can be a good transition if you want to leave it at that. Up to you.
You know, I'll second it and say it's realizing that Eric and I are both so fortunate to do work that really has let people be empowered to create new things, and that they're the center stage. It's not really about our tools. It's about what they do with it. I think watching those eureka moments are just the best part of my job, both as a professor, as a parent, and, you know, really just as someone who is kind of out in the greater maker community. When you see other people empowered to take on an activity or lead an activity, and those lights go off both literally and figuratively, I think that's the best part for me.
Thank you both so much. I want to transition. Yes, can we thank them? I want to close with a few last thoughts that I'm hoping will frame this as we get ready to leave Computer Science Education Week. Let me see if I can share my screen. Wait a minute. Let's see if I can do this properly. There we go. I wanted to close with a few themes. Some themes that I think are familiar to you. Do you all remember a few weeks ago when I introduced to you the door on campus that has its own website? So for AnnMarie and Eric, Friend Central stepped into the Internet of Things for the first time. The door on the new makerspace has its own website, so when you're on campus and you go to door.friendcentral.org, you can see the live updating status of whether or not the door is open so that you can know if you can come by the makerspace and work on your projects. So when I introduced that to the students, one of the things that was apparent was that computer science had a functional purpose, right? It was cool that I could program a thing together, and I did some soldering, and I can explain to you how the magnetic door switch works, but also that there was a chance for me to do something creative. So I could stylize what I wanted the door website to look like. And then past that, everyone here is invited to make their own custom theme for the door website, and all you have to do is make your theme. I can help you learn CSS, and you can make your file and put it into a folder, and then whenever you go to the door website, it will load a random person's theme. So some of the ideas that were shared then, maybe these ideas are familiar, is that computer science had a functional use, it was an outlet for creative expression, and that everyone was invited to participate. But I think AnnMarie and Eric do those things so well that it can push us to think a little bit more deeply. So I have 3 new themes. Here's my first one. I think that computation can give us a new way to think about the world around us. So here's an analogy that's a personal story that might put that into context for you a little bit. I think that something really amazing happens when you realize that the power of storytelling and of metaphors and of symbolism is real, and they don't just exist in books and in language arts classes or lit classes. But in fact, our identities are wrapped up in the stories we tell, and that the metaphors we use shape our experiences and our memories. And so there's a really transformative moment that can happen when you realize that the things that you're studying in lit class are powerful ideas that can change the way you relate to your own world around you. And for me, I can remember the exact moment when that transformative thing happened. I was sitting in Miss Ewan's lit class at Friends Central, and we were reading short stories by Drupal Lahiri, and my friend Kate was talking about the symbolism of a dinner time meal and sharing it with friends, and I went, oh, I get it. And somehow metaphor and symbolism was part of my day-to-day life, and I couldn't unsee what I saw. So I think there's something really powerful that computation can do too, when you can take big problems and decompose them into lots of small problems that you can tackle one step at a time. Here's another theme. That understanding the world of computer science can allow you to make decisions for yourselves, decisions which otherwise will get made for you. That sounds like something important, right? Everything that you see on a computer screen has been designed by someone. The placement of every single button, the font of every word, the color of every background screen, and sometimes those decisions are insignificant, but sometimes they really matter. So consider all of the experiences that you have on computer screens. When you make a new account on a website, where is that information about you being saved? When you post a status update, who actually has access to see that? Or if you click the delete button on it, how can you ever be sure that it's actually being deleted? If you have the computational literacy to ask the right questions, then you'll have the language actually to get meaningful answers. But without an understanding of computer science, to make these decisions for yourselves, you will always be subjected to the decisions made by other people. And better yet, if you ask questions and you get answers that you don't like, you deserve to program new answers for yourself. That brings me to my last theme. The last theme is that your voice deserves to be heard. We're not celebrating Computer Science Education Week because everyone needs to grow up and become a programmer. The expectation is not that you sacrifice your winter break and program your first iPad app. That's really not the point. Because the world needs poets and dancers and doctors and teachers and astronauts and chefs, and you get my point, right? It's not that the world needs more programmers. The point is that the world needs more kinds of programmers. There need to be different people of different backgrounds with different goals because all voices need to be heard. There's tremendous power in computer science not only to see the world differently, but to affect the world differently. And so we need a chorus of diverse voices to represent that world if we're going to peacefully transform it for the better. I think AnnMarie and Eric embody that so beautifully, and I'm nothing but grateful to them for sharing their time with us. So, Can we just thank them one more time on this holiday day? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Friends Central, stay put. AnnMarie and Eric, thank you again. Bye-bye.